The paintings and life story of Vincent Van Gogh would appear to make the case that there's a connection between great art and madness. But does that apparent link have any real basis in science? Rita Braver takes a closer look.
Starry, starry night.
In the midst of his fierce and ultimately losing battle with madness, Vincent Van Gogh made some of the most beloved paintings in the world.
The darkness in my soul.
They are highly expressive, and they're certainly informed by what must have been, these awful experiences of mental breakdowns.
Mary Morton, curator of French paintings at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, says this self-portrait was painted in a mental asylum after Van Gogh famously cut off a piece of his own ear. But it's the other side he displays in this work. What do you think he wanted to show us in this one? The good side, the fact that he really is okay?
No, not necessarily. I mean, does he look okay to you?
He looks mysterious and kind of tortured.
Yeah, and a little bit sick. He's haunted is what he is. He looks very haunted, and I think that he's expressing that in a very honest way.
Months later, Van Gogh is widely believed to have committed suicide. And he is just one of scores of visual artists, writers, musicians, and other creative people who are known or believed to have suffered from mental illness.
Study after study after study has shown that there is a disproportionate rate of mood disorders, in particular, in highly creative people.
Kay Redfield Jamison is professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and is considered a leading expert on mood disorders in artists. What is known about what goes on in the brain that might create a relationship between mania of some kind and creativity?
One of the things that has been observed since mania was first written about is that people have more energy, more drive, they take more risks. It's also the profound despair that comes from depression that gives them a different kind of appreciation of the human condition.
Some preliminary studies also suggest a neurological explanation. The brain's frontal lobe seems to be activated in a similar way during mania, schizophrenia, and creativity. But whatever the reason, Jamison says, artists who suffer from mental illness, like Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Robert Lowell, whom she has studied extensively, share an important trait. They can somehow muster the power to channel their suffering.
He had one of the worst variations of bipolar illness that I've seen in terms of just severity. I mean, what it took was this iron will, this ability to get up the next morning and sit down and write.
I want to talk about a couple of other people that you've written about. Take Ernest Hemingway.
Well, I think that Hemingway had a very complicated view of his own illness. And for example, when Scott Fitzgerald wrote his great essays about depression, the crack-up, Hemingway was scathing in his criticism of Fitzgerald for having gone public about having been mentally ill.
Since then, dozens of artists have struggled publicly with their mental illness. Michael Angelakos is founder of the indie band Passion Pit, cool enough to land on Letterman. He says some of his most popular songs reflect his ongoing battle with bipolar disorder. People think, oh, well, somebody is in a manic state. They're so productive, they're so creative. Do you think that was true for you?
Sometimes there's a double-edged sword where you may be productive, but maybe not everything makes sense.
Were there periods where you couldn't work at all, where you just felt despondent?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, most of my 20s was taken over by depressive periods. I would have to literally fling myself up into a manic state to get things done. It pretty much ruined my life in my 20s, absolutely.
Today, at 30, Angelakos is taking medication and also undergoing electroconvulsive therapy, options not available to many artists of the past. He says he is trying to keep himself on track and also raise money and awareness. His hope to help other artists understand they can cope with mental illness, yet, like Vincent Van Gogh, still create visionary art.
We don't want our artists to be like everybody else. We want them to provide the kinds of emotional experiences that are not mundane, and certainly Van Gogh does that for us.